Hey, how's it going? I'm Mike Squires, and this is Couch's Podcast, episode number 175. And my guest, Andee Blacksugar of KMFDM and Black Sugar Transmission. Andee is one of the most insanely and underappreciated insanely talented and underappreciated guitar players I think that I've ever met and known. Um, Holy moly, can this guy play? Woo! Woo! Yeah. Uh, lent lent his talents and guitar playing to a Couchris video earlier this year, 2020. We did "Behind the Sun" by Red Hot Chili Peppers. That he picked that from the list. That was great. I was hoping someone was going to pick it, and he came along and snatched that one up. Um, and in the course of this conversation, he revealed to me that he over the course of the last year during the pandemic stuff. I don't have you. Do you guys hear about the pandemic? Um, he either created or contributed to 13 different albums. 13. I thought I was getting shit done. 13 albums. That is it. In in addition to being insanely talented, incredibly prolific. So that shit is inspirational. Let me tell you. I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did because I loved it. I had a great time. If you are enjoying the Couches podcast, please support us on Patreon. That is the only place where you can download these cover songs that we're creating every single week. And your support is very, very appreciated. Thank you so much. If you are already supporting, thank you. If you are considering it, thank you for watching and listening and sharing and commenting and telling me what you think. I appreciate it. Even when you say, this guy, this part, he was a real dum dum. Yeah, well, everyone's a dum dum sometimes. Except for me. I'm not. Anyway, uh, yeah, thank you for supporting at Patreon. Patreon.com/couchriffs. Also, thank you to River City Guitars, rivercityguitars.com, and at River City Guitars on social media. River City Guitars is in Spokane, Washington. Although, every day is a buying day. They specialize in vintage, used, and generally cool boutique guitars, amps, drums, recording equipment, just vintage, cool vintage and used stuff. So, like I said, every day is a buying day. My guy over there, Bobby, is traveling all around the country all the time. If you have something that you want to sell or you want to wheel and deal, shoot him a message, sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Tell them I sent you. They're like family. I love those guys. Also, maybe include a picture of what you're trying to move. And I would not steer you anywhere that I wouldn't go myself. These guys I I trust, and I enjoy their company very, very much. That's also one of very few places where you can find this Marvin Guitars CN90, which I co-designed with Keith Horn at Marvin Guitars to celebrate the 100th episode of Couch Riffs almost a year ago. Although through designing and all blah blah blah, it took a while for it to get done. But only that's the prototype you see hanging behind me, and there are only four others made, and they're going to River City Guitars and the Guitar Shop, New York City in Brooklyn, where you'll find our friends Carbonetti and La Bella Strings, and our good friend and alumni of the show and podcast, Matt Gabbs, too. He's over there working on guitars, building stuff. Um, yeah, that's it. Anyway, listen, here comes the podcast. You're great. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be a dick. It's easier to be cool than it is to be a dick. I think that's what I hear. Hello. Oh, you're sideways.
Hey,
You're all sideways.
let me see if I can unsideways myself. Ah, I almost,
Yeah.
I almost never get it right the first try.
If I had a nickel for every time, or every component of my life I could plug that statement into, I'd be rich.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you plug a USB cable in. It's almost never the right.
Right. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm very good. It's a beautiful day. Is it nice in the city?
It's gorgeous. Yeah, gonna probably go to Central Park later.
Nice. I'm gonna I'm gonna cut the grass and lay lay plans for planting a hedge.
Oh wow. Do you use earplugs when you mow the lawn?
I have over ear um yeah, over ear headphone hearing protection because have you sustained any hearing damage over the years?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have terrible ringing. It's awful.
yeah, I do too. And the reason why I got it is from using earbuds in the city.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it wasn't even from playing in bands or anything because I was always really good about using earplugs whenever I'm playing or at a loud show. I've always used earplugs. And, I moved to the city and I started just listening to music and, you know, on little earphones and just turning it up to compete with the city. And after 2 years of that, I had full on tinnitus.
It I that's remarkable to me.
Yeah, I think earbuds are really terrible for your ears. I mean, I think they, even, I don't know, the ones that everyone uses, those white ones. I
Oh,
don't know. I think that there's probably a noise canceling option that's okay, but yeah, it, it's no fun having tinnitus. It's like your constant companion.
no, I don't even know what tone it is because it's like three different tones, four different tones happening in my head at any given like at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's never a time when I don't hear it. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, if there's something going on, if there's music playing, or if I'm outside, I don't hear it. But when it's really, I'm like, no. I could be at a concert, I can hear it. I could be, I mean, it's competitive with everything else that I hear.
Here's a strange thing that started to happen to me. Uh, and I only noticed it once I moved to Brooklyn 6 years ago because we spent more time going out to restaurants because, most people's kitchens are tiny, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't cook much in our first apartment. Um, but we would go out to a place, and depending on the acoustics in a room, um, like our favorite neighborhood place, there were certain areas of the restaurant I couldn't sit if it was busy
Yes.
because of the way the sound reflected and resonated. Um, and I don't remember that ever being an issue before I had hearing damage. And I don't know if I just don't know what that is.
I don't either, but I know exactly what you're talking about. There's just the acoustics of a room. If it's like a place that has one of those old kind of tin ceilings, I don't know what those ceilings are. I actually have them, but I'm not sure what those are made of. Those molded,
Yeah.
patterned, um, just places like that where the cacophony of voices just it gets to be so shrill, and that's really one of the worst things too. Is just having to sort of talk over loud kind of public environments, whether it's a bar or a restaurant.
It's insane. I can't when I'm in that in a space like that, I can't think or
Yeah,
concentrate at all.
I will use earplugs if it is bad enough in a situation like that in a restaurant or a bar or whatever. I'll just put earplugs in because eventually um, you'll adjust to the earplugs and you'll be able to hear the person you're talking to. But there's lip reading going on there too. Like that's one of the things that's been taken away by all this mask wearing. Is that I don't know about you, but I've had whole conversations where I'm looking at this person's eyes and I can't hear what they're saying and I can't read their lips and I'm like, what are they saying to me?
Have you had this thing happen? Are there places that you frequent or situations where you've met people over the last year and you have no idea what they actually look like?
Yeah,
It's
I do
crazy.
have that. I do have that. I have my local coffee place, Oslo Coffee,
Yeah.
has this girl's been working there for like most of the last year, and I've never seen her face below her eyes.
Right, if you saw her on the street, you wouldn't know her.
No, I wouldn't. And I've thought about that too. Like, what if I saw her on the street? I would probably, she would know me probably because I've got like, I don't know, I've got like a memorable haircut or something. But like, I don't know. There's definitely there. I know exactly what you mean. I'm looking forward to getting back to lip reading.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. Uh hey, so I want to back up. I want to reel it back. You said you started wearing we got on this because we're talking about tinnitus, and you said that you started wearing earbuds when you moved to New York. When did you move to New York and where did you move from?
In 1996.
Wow.
Yeah, 25 years ago,
You've been here a minute.
as they say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I moved from Pennsylvania. I grew up sort of like outskirts of Philadelphia. Mostly, we were like, my family lived like, say, halfway between Philadelphia and Reading,
Yeah.
and pretty suburban, pretty boilerplate kind of suburban upbringing.
Pennsylvania is
And
a fucking weird state, man.
it is, it is. I mean, they talk about Pennsylvania,
I
you
think
know,
Pennsylvania I last weekend I had the pleasure of driving through Pennsylvania, into the heart of Pennsylvania, if you will.
yeah.
Uh, and there's a lot of Dollar General store. It's happening out there. It's a
Yeah, there's areas that are really nice and bougie, um, and then there's just like kind of rural blight
yeah,
where there's just like long stretches of you know uh, really depressed areas that look people's kind of properties covered with old refrigerators and appliances and gutted cars and things like that. But they have a pool and a satellite dish, it's like
right.
that kind of thing.
When me and
Um,
my wife were looking for a house up here in the Hudson Valley, 3 years ago, we I would make a point because if we found a place that seemed cool, we would make a drive by and we would drive around the whole neighborhood, and I would not even look at a house if the neighbors had appliances in their yard. uh and that's tougher than it sounds, to find a place where you don't have that going on, that's affordable.
yeah, yeah. So it's like a really, I mean, if you drive from one side of the state to the other, I don't know how much, it's probably like 6 hours. Um,
And it's
so
beautiful.
it's big. Yeah, it's beautiful. Pennsylvania was a good place to grow up, but it was not it was not a place that I was destined to remain, like just
Right.
as a, not only as a musician, but like just as a person that seeks adventure and I love the diverse, constant flow of different people that walk down my street every single day. You know,
There's nothing like New York.
yeah, there really isn't. I mean, I haven't been to another city that I think is competitive. Like, oh yeah, maybe I'd move there. There's some other cities I really like, but I think New York just has the edge because of that. It's sort of a hub of the world, and it still has like this. I love that you don't have to have a car. I love that it's 24 hours. I love that there's an edge to it. I love that there's four seasons. I like a good solid East Coast year of four really different seasons. I don't crave the LA daily kind of Groundhog Day. Every day is beautiful. Isn't
Right.
this great? Like I don't want that. I want there to be some moody days and some days that are just like this sucks.
That definitely happens. Usually, I mean, usually in the peak of summer and in the depth of winter, right?
Yeah. And I really enjoy it though. I love wintertime. I love that kind of restorative time when maybe get a little bit hibernatory. And I think like walking in the winter on the streets of New York is like really exhilarating and refreshing and poetic. And I love the way the sky looks in the wintertime, the way the sun slants across from the south. And yeah, to me it's like, right now this weather that we're talking about now is just the reward for making it through the cold months, and so I appreciate it a lot more. And it just makes you know it makes music more poignant. I like that your wardrobe changes,
Yeah.
and it's good.
I
But
appreciate that
you're
in the winter you can't smell the trash cans on the street in
yeah,
the.
everything's frozen. Yeah. So where did you live in Brooklyn?
We lived in South Williamsburg, like South Fifth and Hooper.
Oh, okay. I'm on Metropolitan and Havemeyer.
Oh yeah. So you've got two Oslos that you can visit. Which one are you visiting?
There's one really close to me on Roebling,
Yeah.
and I like that one a little better because it's got. I mean, in the last year, they've been cultivating their sidewalk seating,
Yeah.
so it's a really good place to just sit on the sidewalk and read and and talk to people if you run into anyone.
I miss the Roebling Tea Room. Did you ever
Wait, what?
did you ever go
You,
there?
you
The Roebling Tea Room? It's right next to the fire station there.
what did you do there? No, I know the place.
Oh, I said I miss it.
Oh, you missed it. Oh, I thought you said you mixed it.
Oh.
Um, yeah, of course I remember the Roebling Tea Room. That was a really cool place. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff around here. I'm not bothered really by the whole hyper gentrification aspect of it. I mean, it kind of sucks, but I really don't have any complaints about this neighborhood.
Right. How
It's
long have you
still
been there? Have you been in that neighborhood for 26 years?
25. 25 is how long I've been in New York City. This month
Wow.
is my 25th anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I've been here most of the time. I lived in the East Village for 2 years,
Mhm.
on 11th and 1st. And I moved over here in '98 to Williamsburg.
You've seen limitless change. What
Yeah.
seems like unimaginable change.
Yeah. I mean, when I moved to New York, I didn't know anything about the city at all. I'd been here a couple of times or a few times, and I just knew that this was the place for me. That's all I knew. But I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a plan, and it took me, it took me a couple of weeks to realize, oh, hang on, it looks like the stuff that I'm interested in is kind of. But my first apartment was on 58th Street for just a couple of months. Really weird location, 58th and Broadway.
Right.
The building's not there anymore. But it took me, a couple of weeks of just leafing through the Village Voice when I started to realize everything is downtown. Everything is like a downtown train, like 6 stops from here. So when I had to move, I found a place in the East Village, and so at that point in time, the East Village and the Lower East Side was still like this really good, tight little hub of like venues and musicians. And, it's like the venues were pretty much all within walking distance and everybody just lived there.
Right.
So it was just sort of like, oh, I'm a fish in water in this place, like I can walk to my gigs. I was teaching guitar lessons. I can walk to my students' houses, and then that started to dissipate as the rent started to go up and people had to start crossing the river. And that's where the Williamsburg migration of musicians, I guess, kind of started.
Right. So
And when I moved here, it was like this place was really quiet back then. It was sort of like there was the car service, there was the bodega. I remember having to still go into Manhattan if I wanted to make flyers for my band.
Right.
Like a lot of things just, it wasn't a full service neighborhood yet.
Right. I think I visited there the first time in 2000, and it was still very like there was a large community of people who had moved over there by then, but it was
Yeah,
still like if you went there at 10:30 at night, it was pretty closed down.
totally. Yeah. And it was cool. I really liked Williamsburg around 2003. There was kind of a good balance. It was like there was enough stuff here that it felt like a real kind of, it felt like a self-sustaining place that I didn't have to leave to do any basic stuff. But the high rises hadn't gone up yet. That was around 2007. All of a sudden, it's just like these things just start rising out of the earth like these like monsters in a,
Right.
in a Japanese radiation disaster movie. Things just so that's the way the neighborhood is now.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. There's a Whole Foods and an Apple store and every clothing store that is in every mall across America, and
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
yeah. I mean, I've sort of always
But Mikey's
what I
Hookup's
love.
still there.
What's that?
Mikey's Hookup is still there.
That's right. Mikey's hookup uh, back in 2017 when I got the KMFDM gig and I had to learn the show on really short notice. I needed to get a long stereo cable, like a 50-foot long tip ring sleeve cable, because I'm not using one right now, but the way my guitars are wired up, I have a stereo output. I'll explain that later, but Mikey's Hookup was the only place that had such a cable. Like,
Right.
I went to Guitar Center. I went to other music. I went to places that I liked better,
Right.
And nobody had this thing, you know. It was just like, what do you want that for? Nobody could understand why I needed this thing, but Mikey's hookup had one, and Mikey, in fact, hooked me up that day.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
And yeah, those guys they're pretty funny in there too.
they are funny. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they got like the ping pong table, and it's very Williamsburg.
Yeah. So you were drawn to come to New York,
Yeah,
and did you have gig experience before you came to New York? You said you didn't know anyone. You knew no one?
I knew no one. I had gig experience, you know, when I in Pennsylvania. I started playing in bands, like professional bands, when I was like 17 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Cover bands?
my first band was a cover band. It was sort of like it was sort of like, for me, it was like the easiest. It wasn't what I aspired to, but it was like it was sort of the easiest way to get out and get a little bit of quick experience. You know, I joined a band that had gigs on the books that played every weekend, and they were older, and so it was good for me. And I played in a couple of bands, um, and one of the original bands I played in uh, came up and played a show in New York City, and I just kind of felt like, oh man, this is where I should be.
Right.
Like back in Pennsylvania, it's sort of like the cover band thing is kind of your only um, it's your only viable way of making a living as a musician. And I didn't want to be like one of these people with like a day job and music is just for weekends. Like that just does not work with me at all.
Right.
um because at the time I was doing that. I was like trying this day job thing, and I was doing like temp jobs, and I hated it. It just felt so wrong. Like
It's
it
soul
felt
sucking.
what's that?
It's soul sucking.
It is soul sucking, and the jobs weren't even that bad.
Right.
I was working as I was hired to as a computer tech at this corporate headquarters, where I, along with like a group of people similar to me, uh, were our job was to go around and convert every PC in this corporate headquarters to a new operating system. And so it was sort of like this quasi corporate job, but I didn't have to like, I was sort of like a roaming kind of auxiliary type employee. I didn't have a desk or anything. So it was kind of cool. That kind of suited me as far as like, well, it's not totally suit and tie kind of thing, but it was just the fact that when I would get home, I would just have nothing left for music. I would sort
Right.
of have like these ideas while I'm at the job, like at 11 in the morning, I'm drinking coffee and I'm thinking of these musical ideas. Like, can't wait to get home and work this stuff out. This is going to be great. And then I get home and I'd be like, what was I thinking back then? I didn't remember. Like, I'm tired now. Like doing something for 8 hours,
It's
it kind of drains the battery, you know?
yeah.
So, yeah, so basically what I did when I moved to New York was I had a little bit of money saved up from my day jobs, and I kind of lived off that for a couple of months and tried to get guitar students. And I got some gigs, or kind of gun for hire gigs, um, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I was just answering ads in The Voice, and then just being out there and meeting people, and stuff just started to, you know, um, just the thing about New York that's great is that there's so many people bouncing off of each other that if you just leave the house,
Right.
stuff can happen, you know? And so I started teaching, I started doing gun for hire stuff. And basically, over the years, I've just tried to expand that into other things that I can do. Um, Eventually I get into digital audio, and I'm good with that, and I can do either guitar session work, or I can do like full on production stuff for people, um, remixes, anything in that realm. And I eventually got into like publishing, getting some of my songs licensed for use in TV and stuff like that. And now I'm doing Patreon as well, which I coincidentally started right before COVID started. So basically, my life for the last year has just been all that stuff minus the live gigging.
Right.
And it saved me the fact that I was able to do all these other things still, and I just kind of did them a little bit more, and tried to get some more students, tried to get some more studio work. Um, and so it's good because I don't really lean particularly on one of those things too heavily. So if you take one thing away, I've still got a couple other legs to stand on, and it also allows me to not burn out.
On
I
one,
never want
just one thing.
on just one thing, especially like the live. Playing touring is one thing. If you get a cool touring gig and you're out there and you're getting paid a good daily wage, and you're just you're out there on the road, not spending any money and just accumulating income, that's great. But like, for the most part, like when you're just getting by in the city with local gigs, it's really the worst kind of pay grade that out of all the things that you can do, because you're getting paid 100 or 200, maybe $250 a gig.
That's a good
Um,
gig. Let me know if you need a bass player for that one.
yeah, exactly, right. That's like a great gig, but when you think about it, it's like a lot of these gigs are one-offs. So
Right.
you don't even get to milk the gig and get multiple, after learning the material and doing the rehearsals. You can't. A lot of times the artist is like, well, I can't afford to do another show until like 9 months from now, and then by
Right.
then it's a different show, it's different songs. And by the time you add up like the time you spent working on the material at home, the rehearsal with the band, the sound check, which a lot of these artists like to show up and do the sound check at 2 in the afternoon or something.
Travel to
Yeah,
and from. Yeah,
yeah,
you got paid
it
$8
kills the
an
whole
hour.
day.
You got
Yeah,
$8 an hour.
the whole the whole the whole day of the show is basically just blacked out. So it's not a very practical way to make money, but you want to keep doing that because you want to keep your toe in that water, and you want your phone to still ring.
But
And
you also
you
meet a lot of people.
yes,
I didn't play a lot of gigs when I moved to New York, and so I didn't really meet very many people. Um, Oddly, of
what were you doing?
just working, and I was doing sales work when I moved here, so walking around Brooklyn and walking around the city, you know, all day. When I would get home, I didn't have much left.
Right.
But when I started doing the podcast, I mean, Couch Riffs is how I met you and how I met a a lot of people in New York.
Yeah.
I wish I would have
Yeah.
started doing it earlier.
It's great. I love the podcast, and I love the concept of couch riffs. It's like, but you started doing couch. Did you do couch? You did that before, because I saw you with Timo doing the Boston thing.
Yeah,
That was
that's how
before
it
COVID.
started.
Way before. Yeah.
That's how it started. The next step is, and I might come talk to you if you want $150 gig. Um, I think the next concept is to do this in front of an audience. Do the
Ah,
talk
fun.
show in front of an audience, kind of like a talk show, right? Do the podcast like a talk show. Have a band of mixed, not like Netherlands as the backing band. It would be a band kind of like the concept of the videos that I'm doing now.
Right.
And then the band, my guest, and myself would do a short set of covers and do that in
You
front
know,
of an audience in a small place. And
we just did something like that a couple weeks ago.
really,
Yeah, my partner in crime, Hypnodoll, had a birthday on uh, January 24th, and we sort of put together a show where there were a couple of bands, and then members of those bands reconfigured for a third set of unrehearsed cover tunes with a different singer getting up for each song.
oh, that sounds fun.
So it's kind of like what you're describing.
Unrehearsed. What kind of songs were getting thrown out? Was that premeditated or was it
No,
spontaneous?
it was premeditated. We all knew what we were going to play.
Right.
And we did have a little sound check where we kind of ran a couple of sections that we thought would maybe be tricky. Um, well, the songs we did Jailbreak and Rosalie.
Yeah.
So Thin Lizzy, well, Rosalie is a Bob Seger tune, but the Thin Lizzy version of Rosalie, Heartbreaker by Led Zeppelin, um, uh, Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac,
Mm-hmm.
Bitch by Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
and I Want to Be Your Dog.
Nice.
So nothing in there was too tricky, but still, it's the just the fact that everybody's having to really think on their feet. It's just fun. It's good for your brain. I really like that kind of playing, and it's just so much fun.
And you've
So
gotten a lot. I mean, New York musicians, and I guess musicians everywhere, if they're active, you get a lot more of that.
yeah,
It's great if you have a band and that's your regular gig, especially if your band tours and supports you. But uh, as far as actively engaging your brain in different ways, uh, you know, just having a band and that's it doesn't really do that.
right. One of the things that I started doing here in New York like years ago, probably around 2007 or so. Um, I started playing. Do you remember the Arlene's Grocery Live Rock Karaoke band on Monday nights?
I don't, but I used to play in a live karaoke band and it was the best thing I ever did for my playing.
Exactly. So they had this really long running thing at Arlene's, and one night I got called to go and sub on guitar for this gig, and they sent me the song list, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, there's a few songs on here I might be in trouble if they get called, but you know what? I'm going to do this. It's like 250 songs.
Yeah.
Um, and since that point, like I've done variations of that gig on and off over the years, and it really is like it's so good. There's like because what happens is there's certain songs that always get played every single time
Don't
someone picks
stop
living
believing.
on a wait, which one?
Don't stop believing.
Don't stop believing,
Living on a prayer.
living on a prayer.
What's that fucking song that they sing at the in Boston all the fucking time? Uh, the Neil Diamond song.
Oh yeah, Sweet Caroline.
That's right. That
Yeah,
fucking song. I'm trying to think of all the other. We did Seven Nation Army a lot.
totally. Yeah,
Uh, oh God. I mean, there were 40 songs basically.
yeah.
Really got wrangled.
Well, I'll give you a couple more
Yeah,
that
do it.
always.
Yes.
Um, you ought to know.
Oh yeah. No, that's a fun one too, though. I
It
actually
is fun.
that's a because I was playing bass.
I actually don't think any of those songs are not fun to play. I love rock and roll is a big one.
Yep.
Girls just want to have fun. You know.
Bass line of that song is a lot like oh God, there were two songs that had very similar bass lines. Boom, 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 boom. Uh,
Right, right. Yeah, I remember getting. I remember someone calling a ZZ Top song from Eliminator, and I just started playing the other song from Eliminator that sounds really similar, and and it was so weird because everyone's kind of looking at me like, "Huh." And the guy that got up to sing just went with it, and he ended up singing this. I can't remember like what are the hits from Eliminator? There's that
Sharp Dress Man. Yeah.
um what's the other one that's kind of like
Legs. Sharp Dress
it's
Man. Legs. She's got legs.
it's not legs, it's not under pressure.
I love that.
What is the other tune? Well, anyway, I there have been times when a song gets called when everyone in the band looks at each other like, is that song on the list?
Right. The song that did that for me every time, because it only got picked once every 6 months, was fucking Come On Eileen. Because that song really moves, and there's some key change or some modulated parts, and it always messed me up on the bass. Messed me up.
That's there's certain karaoke songs that seem like a good idea, and they're not really practical.
Like
It's
ones with
like,
long instrumental breaks.
oh yeah,
Bad.
a lot of the list on that Arlene's karaoke song list were lots of long Led Zeppelin tunes with long, because they just wanted, the guys that made the list, they just wanted to fucking play.
Right.
So it's like, it's like a 10-minute guitar solo. I was like, how's it? But it's like one of those songs where the singer gets up there and they're just standing around for the whole time.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of people have had to hear me tell the story, but I've never told you. When I started doing that gig, I had a beard, and our song list was over 500 songs. And same thing, there was a screen that had lyrics on it, and when the lyrics came up, it showed the key, and we were on a click, right?
Ah,
So, because that's how the lyrics were in time with us.
right.
Uh, but we didn't rehearse. Same as you probably. We
Yeah, yeah.
never rehearsed once. If there was a new song, we might introduce it at sound check. But I got so stressed out thinking that I had to learn every single song that I got alopecia in my beard, and it started to just fall out in clumps from
Oh
stress.
wow.
Yeah, and The band leader was like, "Whoa, what the fuck are you doing? Just you don't have to do that. Just listen. Just listen to the songs constantly."
Right.
Uh, and then when it gets called, you'll figure it out. And to
Well,
this
that is
day,
a
it's
huge.
exactly how I do, you know, couch riffs. I don't learn a song till 10 minutes before I record it.
Yeah. I mean, it is the listening. It's just being able to hear it in your head before the song, before you start. Like if you can hear the first couple of notes, you're home free pretty much.
Right.
Um, but you know what you're talking about with the click track and everything. eh, The thing with karaoke is people get up and some of them have their own sense of where the lyrics go,
Yeah, that's right.
and it's like, okay, do we go with them or do we stay the chorus?
Yeah, that's a treacherous path. There's a lot of choose your own adventure going on there. Hey, so I have a question. Do you have a specific teaching method? Because what we're talking about here basically is as far as learning songs, and I guess when it comes to improvising or writing a part, it also applies. And that is that if you can hear something and understand it, being able to translate that and recommunicate it on an instrument, guitar in this case, or bass, um, you just have to understand the interface and understand the intervals
Yeah.
on the fretboard, right? Do you have like a an approach or technique to teaching that, or how did you learn? Did Because we didn't learn with the internet.
Yeah, I didn't learn with the internet. I just learned from learning dozens and dozens and dozens of albums. Like whatever I could manage to play, I would, some things I probably didn't play exactly right, but I more or less learned um, everything that I listened to, and so I developed an ear, which was really good. But I didn't know anything about music theory until later. I started to kind of gradually get interested in that. So what I try to do with my students is not hammer them with music theory, um, but I'll sort of mention it along the way. So, by the way, this is this song. This song is in the Mixolydian mode, and here's why. It's
Right.
a major mode with a flat seven. So the dominant seven chord is Mixolydian. It's Pretty Woman. Well, it's actually. Um, I try to get I try to get my students to associate music theory terms with songs that they actually know.
Right.
So if I'm trying to communicate if I've got a kid that likes heavy metal, I'll explain to him what the Phrygian mode is by showing him, or
How good is James
like
Hetfield though?
if you can just remember the sound of that and associate that with Phrygian. Um, I also have something I've realized recently. Um, I'll do this kind of thing with some of my students where I'll play something and I'll say, okay, play this back. And I'll go, something simple. Some of my students are like, young kids are like 10 or something, but they know how to play the scale. And the first thing they do is they sort of like put their fingers down and start just aimlessly walking around in the scale. And I'll say, okay, listen to it again and sing it back. And then they go, da, 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 da. And I say, now play it. And somehow they're able to play it. Once they can sing it, they go, because now they've internalized like the direction that the notes go in,
Right.
and then that kind of dictates where the fingers go. So yeah, I would say, I mean, every student is different, and I have some students that are total beginners. If they're kids, especially, I just want to keep it focused on the things that they like. Let's learn songs that you like, and I'll explain to you what's going on in the song, but
That
that
keeps
may stay with them or not, you know?
that keeps young players interested, because there are a lot of opportunities for you to get discouraged when you are getting started because you hit plateaus or you don't even get to your first plateau. A lot of people will quit before they even have the opportunity to plateau.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right. And some some of my students are not necessarily burning with the desire to play like I had.
Right.
Like, and you probably had. It's just that was what got us through, was the fact that, well, you can't even take this thing out of my hands. Like, I don't care what you do, I'm gonna play. Um, so some of the kids that I teach, I sort of have to. It's kind of like really delicate. Like, I know that they're gonna fade if I don't keep them interested. And um, you know,
Music is
I had some early guitar lessons. That was sort of a condition for getting an electric guitar. You know, my mom said, "Well, we'll get you one, but you have to take lessons and learn properly." And um, the lessons really weren't exactly right for me, I think. And the teacher was trying to teach me sight reading. And meanwhile, I'm at home, like learning things by ear, and I'm just making progress that's tangible, and I'm achieving the goals that I have. And this sight reading thing to me seemed really like unnecessarily arcane. Like, why do I have to go through this roundabout way of, like, I can hear the notes, I can find them, I can play them. If anything, maybe my technique is stopping, my lack of technique is stopping me from playing certain things, but that's something that'll come in time. So yeah, I had an okay experience with guitar lessons, but after about 9 months or so, I was just like, I think I'm going to quit. I think that I'm learning the way I want to learn on my own, and it's a kind of a shame. If I would have, I think if I would have found a really great teacher, I think I would have maybe avoided some bad habits. You know, maybe you know, two heads are better than one.
But
But
let me ask you this. What was the spark for you that made you want to pick up the guitar? Because it sounds like you were probably working out of the Mel Bay guitar method book. And it's like you're learning row, row, row your boat and other simple melodies for the first 15 pages, which makes up 3 weeks, 4 weeks of lessons. You know, it's like,
right.
uh, how
Well,
uninteresting is that?
I guess by the time I picked up the guitar when I was 15, or maybe like a few months shy of that. And basically, by the time I was 15, the electric guitar was just this fetish object for me, that I was just so obsessed and enamored with. And I was, you know, already a completely obsessive music fan for 3 years or something. And the music that initially really got my attention was the stuff that had big guitars, like just loud wall to wall guitars, you know. And so I had like cardboard replicas that I made, that I carefully filled in with all the details. And I had all the basic shapes. I had a Strat, I had a Les Paul, I had a Flying V, I had
Did you have the classic V or the pointy offset V?
The classic V, the 50s V, and I had an Explorer too,
Oh, good.
which I
It's
thought
good
that
at
was
getting
probably,
taste.
yeah, yeah. I didn't, I don't know. To me, the guitar was just like, I thought it was this magical sword or something that you, that only the gifted could really wield, and it was a direct line to the gods, and it was just like the power of the heavens coming through it. And so I as much as I was enamored with the guitar, I didn't think I would ever be able to play one. It just seemed like this is something that
Other people do.
superhumans do. um, but I stumbled on an acoustic guitar in my grandmother's house, and it was kind of sitting in a closet. No one was looking, so I picked it up and I kind of started plunking out. I'm sure this will be no surprise to you. The first thing I tried to play, what do you think it was?
Probably Smoke on the Water.
It was Smoke on the Water. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm sitting there
On a
with
single
one
note.
string going, and I figured out the correct order of the notes, and that was enough for me to be like, I think I can play this thing. Like, I think I can, you know, um, so it was sort of like this kind of stumbling on it, and just getting just enough confidence to want to keep doing it. And then, on the strength of that success, of course, I learned some other riffs in a single note fashion, like Iron Man would be
Right.
obviously the second choice. So that was sort of how I learned my first few songs. And then at some point, I realized there were chords involved. And then I realized, oh, wait, wrong key. It starts on a different note. And, I probably played Smoke on the Water like four kinds of wrong before I played it right.
I think almost
And
everyone,
it's like,
plays that song wrong, of course.
right. Yeah. And there's actually debate as far as like how it's played, because, I think most people, hang on. But Blackmore has been seen playing it up here. Maybe just to be contrarian or something. And then there's also maybe, is it an open G, or is it a fret? I think it's fretted.
I think it's fretted. But it's hard to discern because John Lord is filling up so much space in there too. And I mean, what a fucking wicked band.
Such a wicked band, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was just, that was one of those songs that I heard, on the radio when I was little, that just made me feel like, I don't know if I should be hearing this.
Right.
Like, this is wicked. Like, hearing, a whole lot of love, and just all that caterwauling, and that weird, like, sexual, that storm, that brewing storm in the middle, with like
Yeah.
the percussion and all these, whipping theremin sounds, and the fade out, Robert Plant is just shrieking like a mad horseman, just like galloping off into the horizon. It's like,
For a
what
kid,
is
it
this
sounds like
stuff?
the background music to return to like the storm section of Return to Witch Mountain or some shit. It's like
Yeah,
scary music.
it really was scary. It just sounded diabolical. It sounded like these guys, I mean, these are men. Like, all the men in my life were like, they wore suits and they had short hair.
Right.
They went to church on Sunday.
Worse. Yeah.
So anyway, that was basically, it was just sort of like I was already enamored with guitar, and then I found one and I just started playing it, basically.
Outside of the classic rock and the radio rock influence that you were getting, Because you said you were living pretty suburban, or were you rural?
Pretty suburban. I mean, we had a kind of a rural thing for about 4 years. Um, we lived in northeastern Pennsylvania for 4 years, and a good ways away from anything. Like Scranton was the closest
Right.
city, you know. But yeah, I mean, aside from aside
I
from
went to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania last weekend. Do you know this
right,
town?
I do. Yeah, I think I've played there.
It's beautiful. They have a very amazing historic theater there.
Yeah, um,
What a cool town.
yeah. There's really cool towns in you know, peppered around in Pennsylvania. Yeah, the radio rock stuff kind of got me into, you know, the hard rock stuff is what grabbed me first. The metal stuff, AC/DC, Van Halen. When I heard Black Sabbath, that was sort of like a major turning point, and I started just moving towards just pure metal. You know, at some point I found Metallica, Slayer, all those bands. Um, and then, you know, I kind of, guitar wise, I kind of got enamored with bands that were kind of doing the opposite type thing, which is like the post punk bands who were kind of anti virtuosos,
Right.
but they were doing amazing things in their songs with just atmosphere and texture. And you know, I started to just like the sound of other instruments that weren't guitar. I like, hey, guess what, I like synthesizers now. Like, I like drum machines, and I like flangers and delays and shoegaze type you know, guitar tones. And so that was a really huge thing for me, because those bands, I mean, The Cure and Susie and the Banshees and um, Public Image and New Order and Jesus and Mary Chain and all those bands were kind of the bands that made me want to write songs. It's like the metal bands made me want to play guitar. But when I started listening to The Cure, I was like, this music is hitting me so much more powerfully than anything else. Like, why? What are they doing?
Right.
It isn't because somebody is in the spotlight playing a virtuoso guitar solo. Although that stuff is cool too, I wanted to know why this other music was so powerful to me. And it was almost like um, it was almost like this universe you could get inside, you know. Uh,
The
and
Cure,
and
of all those bands, The Cure has a heaviness to it rhythmically. Like that rhythm section is matchless, right? Uh,
absolutely.
and over all of their records, like probably one of the greatest bass tones of any bass player.
Oh my
Uh,
God, yeah.
and just like everything about that band is the best. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say I've probably listened to that band more than anybody else. And you know that it so many of their greatest songs are just completely counterintuitive as far as like,
right.
why does that work? Why is a 2 minute intro, what,
Captivating.
why is that not boring? Like, um or a song like Push, you know, they basically play the whole song through instrumentally, and then they start over and they play it again with vocals, and it's over. I mean, think about that. It's like insane, but it is absolutely right. I mean,
It would be too
Fascination
short
Street.
otherwise.
What?
It would be too short otherwise.
It would be. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
Fascination Street is one of the heaviest songs ever.
right. And the bass and the drums never change the whole song.
Right.
The whole time it's just. And what's so interesting about that is, first of all, he plays the entire C minor scale
Out of order.
out of order and on one string. You could play that whole thing down here. But the slides are the important thing, and just the discipline for him to just hunker down and play that over and over again without changing it at all. And the drum pattern is like a 4-bar pattern or something, maybe even an 8-bar pattern. That drummer does really like elaborate long things, and then starts over like a loop.
Yeah.
And it's just, but what's amazing about that song is what gives it its shape is all these layers that they bring in and out. There's like,
It's almost like a hip hop song.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a Public Enemy song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have like all these little things that by themselves are almost not even recognizable, but when you layer it all together, you get this swirling um, patchwork of just like deliriously rich sonics. And then they peel the layers away, and a note sort of like dissolves, and then Robert comes in. Something
Down a couple
inside.
Wow.
And it's just so incredibly powerful to me. Like I wanted to know why that music was hitting me right in the heart. Um, so yeah, like guitar wise, definitely like the post punk bands and the metal bands, and then electronic music has probably been like my main musical inspiration for 20 years now, because it's this the freshness of the sounds and the production uh, motifs are new, and the editing it's a fresher thing to my ears. It's not sounds and paradigms that we've been listening to for many decades. Like the guitar bass drums thing is great. That's like my comfort zone. It's my wheelhouse. But electronic sounds and unprecedented sounds that come from synthesizers and editing and samples and stuff like that is like just profoundly inspiring. And it inspires me as a guitar player too, even though that music doesn't usually have any guitar. It inspires me to make weird sounds on the guitar with effects, and to like play around with the editing of the parts in in the computer. And
What was
yeah,
what was an early I mean, I guess Depeche Mode falls into, I mean, they're not entirely like The Cure, but I I found them at about the same time. Um,
yeah,
and they have they have a similar gravity. Their music
yeah.
has a similar gravity, especially, music for the masses on, or black celebration music for the masses, like that stuff started to get pretty heavy.
I would say they were the first band. Like the first band that I bought. I bought Violator,
Oh,
and
it's a
I
masterpiece.
and the songwriting. I mean, who would do this? words and go up a minor third and play another minor chord. And then
A lot of the songs are written on guitar also.
What's that?
A lot of the songs are written on guitar also, and then transcribed to
Yeah,
electronic instruments, as if I'm to understand correctly.
I think Martin Gore traditionally writes on the guitar. And like an album like that, I think Alan Wilder was really important because he took the guitar voice things and he basically arranged all the stuff on programmed instruments.
Yeah.
But
And there's some
so
guitar on that album.
yeah, there's definitely some guitar in there, you know.
Everything about that record is also incredible. Like the sounds, it's just like it is fucking exquisite.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely, if I had to pick one album that was the first electronic album, it was probably Violator. And then I started listening to New Order. And then when I heard Chemical Brothers, it just took my head off. Like the first Chemical Brothers record, Underworld, the first Daft Punk record. And, you know, like in the late 90s, like when I moved to the city, that was the heyday of that kind of music. Prodigy came out.
Right.
And Fatboy Slim. And I lived for that stuff. I mean, to me, it was just doing all the stuff that I needed music to do that, like, the rock stuff wasn't doing anymore. Like, the rock stuff of that time for me was just totally uninteresting.
Right.
The like post grunge or alt rock for adults or something. It was sort of like this really watered down kind of politely distorted guitars and just kind of bland. I'm not gonna name any bands or anything,
It was
but
a far cry from Nevermind or, you know, In Utero.
in every way, it was a far cry. It was nowhere near as great songwriting. It was nowhere near as visceral. It was nowhere. Yeah, it was just sort of like, oh, this is for the people that are just catching up to that stuff now. That,
right.
You know. So yeah, I mean,
Ask you about this. I saw a video recently that you had posted a song or two where you had done front to back surfing with the alien.
yeah.
And it was incredible. It was so good.
Thank you.
Is that something that you learned, you know, and later on, like way later, or was that stuff that you had been learning back in the 80s or early 90s when
Oh, yeah, that's interesting because Surfing with the Alien was one of those albums that I would play along to
when you were learning?
when I was learning. Yeah, but I would always kind of just play what I wanted over it. So I would I would do like the. You know, so I would go for the lead guitar lines and just kind of solo where he was doing a solo, and I would do my own thing sometimes, but I didn't really dig in and learn all the rhythm guitar parts and the intricacies underneath.
Right.
So for me, it was always just like a fun album to jam to without forensically learning all the parts. So when I did what you're talking about, when I covered the album, I had a lot of learning to do.
There are a lot of notes to figure out.
There's a lot of notes. Well, and I also sort of I didn't force myself. I wanted to do it really fast. I think I did the whole thing in 5 days or 6 days or something.
Wow.
Less than a week. But the main thing I wanted to do was kind of have fun with it and reproduce any of the the parts that are hummable, any kind of a melody that the average person can hum. I need to reproduce that. If there's something fast and notey, um, I'll get in the zone of what he's doing, and I'll do something that's kind of with the same kind of intention, but I'm going to just do it my own way.
Right.
So I tried to have fun with it, and um, you know, it's a short album. Uh, it was fun. It's actually pretty straightforward stuff, you know, that music. I mean, for the most part, you know, Such Boogie is weird. Like programming the drums for that was very, very hard.
Right. Uh, yes, Hatch Boogie has. There's some weird, like there are a couple weird bars in the intro before
Yes.
Boogie Woogie starts in, right?
There's weird bars. It's just I couldn't get it to conform to the grid. I actually ended up having to move parts manually just off the without snapping to anything to
Right.
make it feel right. Um, that was definitely the hardest part, was just the programming of the drums for Satch Boogie. The rest of the stuff, I mean, it's drum machine anyway on that record for most of those tunes.
That's Satch Boogie is also an incredibly unlikely radio hit. He had two radio hits on that record,
Yeah, totally.
which is
I mean, it was obviously the heyday
shred guitar.
of shred guitar, right? You know, I
Yes,
mean,
the story was good. He had a legion of successful guitar players who had studied with him, and
have you talked to Alex Skolnick yet?
I have. Yeah, he was a guest at my apartment in Carroll Gardens. Um,
Cool.
when I did the old style, like when how you saw Timo on the couch. We did a deep
Right, right.
listening. It was great, and he lived close enough. He walked over with his guitar on in a gig bag. It was great,
Yeah, that's cool, right?
and he studied with him, right?
Yeah,
How insane is that?
it's insane. I mean, it's just like the way he talks about it is, yeah, there was this guy that gave guitar lessons. Everyone said he was just like the greatest guy, but that he was almost a cautionary tale of what's wrong with the music business. Why does nobody know who this guy is? He's like the greatest. He's like this, you know, this guitar oracle. It's just
Right.
like living in obscurity in Berkeley. Um, but then, you know, shortly after that, I mean, what's amazing about his, you know, Satriani's students is that he had Charlie Hunter as one of his students
Really?
and Kirk Hammett.
Right.
You know, so it's like just the to be able, and when you think about, you know, you think about where Charlie Hunter has gone with the guitar since then. It's like, you know, he's found his own thing. Like, it's so rare. Like, the way he plays the guitar, no one else is really playing it like that.
You've been teaching for quite a long time,
Yeah,
25 years, more maybe. Were you teaching before you got to New York?
just a little bit. I had like some other kids that were like guitar players that asked me for lessons, but I didn't know. Yeah,
Right.
I wasn't really I barely charged them any money. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Um,
Have you seen any of your students go on to form bands or any young people who have gone on to do things?
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I have students um, that I taught a long time ago that are professionals now.
Yeah.
Um, what I find now that's funny is that kids don't aspire to play in bands now,
Right.
which is really odd. Like for me, that was like the next thing I wanted to do. Like once I could get 4 chords together, I was like, I want to play in a band now. Like
There's a
I want to, I want this to feel real. Like
yeah.
take it out of the bedroom, you know. And I find that because of, you know, the way things are now, it's sort of like it's almost more of a goal to just be like a YouTube guitarist and
It's like
or an Instagram guitarist.
post post video game cultural, infestation into music.
Yeah, and just the fact that the band as a you know paradigm is not the thing that everyone's crazy about now. It's more like it's more auteurs, you know, like EDM type, you know, the dead mouses of the world, you know, one person up on stage and just throngs of revelers, and you know, or hip hop, you know, a rapper, a single person with a mic. um I think that the band as like a cultural paradigm is sort of just in a like a fallow period right now. I think it's going to come back because it's the gang is just a primal thing, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's very weird to me the way, I mean, there are perhaps, I mean, I think that there are more virtuosos now than ever. I think part of that is everyone has not everyone has the same innate talent, natural talent, but I think everyone has the ability to learn how to communicate musically. And
Yeah,
the internet has enabled people beyond anything I ever believed was possible.
yeah,
Um, and it's interesting because, man, I every day if I look at my phone and I look at Instagram and I just see jaw-dropping performances,
yeah.
you know. But
But
I
you're not, are you moved by it?
no, I mean, there's so much virtuosity, just like floating around in the digital world that it's really hard to be impressed. I mean, you'd have to be able to play Black Star one-handed while doing cartwheels to really
Yeah.
get me. Like I would much rather see a band play, but I'm old.
Well, it's, I mean, what you're talking about is really interesting. It's this like micro um, presentation
Right.
uh, thing that we you know the amount of time your video is allowed to be keeps getting shorter. So you gotta dazzle them real quick because you know Instagram is a minute and TikTok is how long can TikTok be?
I
Is
don't
it a minute?
I I don't even know.
Um, or is it less than a minute? I don't know. But yeah, so it's sort of like you got to get people's attention or they're going to scroll past. And that's kind of like the mentality that you're coming from. And, what you know, if this is your main way of reaching people. But yeah, it is sort of like a really incomplete story. It's like, okay, well, you can do that.
Can you play with a drummer who's not on a grid?
Can you play with a drummer? Have you written any songs?
Can you
Can
sing
you
backups while you do that?
can yeah, exactly. All that stuff that's really you know, all that stuff that we're talking about, it just requires it requires more time to learn that stuff, and it requires more attention span from the audience to observe it and appreciate it.
I was about to say, can you do that on stage with a shitty mix? But now everyone's on in ears and everyone's got a great mix. But
Yeah,
that used to be a real thing. I mean, and it still is to a certain degree, but being able to settle in and trust that your band is rehearsed enough that when you perform, you're not hearing the fill, the drummer's keeping time with his left foot at a break, and you're like, shit, I can't hear this guitar break. I think it's, I think we're coming back in now, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing what you go through when you start playing live. I don't know about you, but it took me like years to
Yeah.
even feel comfortable up
You
on stage.
remember your very first time on stage?
Well, it was the talent show, you know, so it was sort of like the best gig of my life in a way. Um,
What did you do?
we did well. We I had a band with no singer, so we were kind of limited as far as it was like me and a drummer and a bass player, and they were brothers, and we jammed in their basement, and so it was very convenient. They were like a really good package deal, but we could never get a singer. So we did, you know, we first of all we started with a guitar solo.
What was it?
It was just me. I just had them go out and start playing a groove in the key of E, and I just walked out on stage and started like doing my version of shredding at the time, which I'd only been playing for like a year or something.
Right.
But the crowd went nuts, and this was like, you know, this was my classmates were people that probably didn't even know I existed before this, you
Right.
know. So that was my first gig, and we played Paranoid, and you know, our abilities were limited, so we did songs that we could manage.
Right.
We did you know our staples were things like Paranoid and Breaking the Law, and you know
The staples everywhere for 15-year-olds learning hard rock music and back then. I don't know. I don't know what do 15-year-olds want to learn now?
well, a lot of the ones that I've been teaching, they just love their parents' music, and they love all the same stuff that
Right.
like it never seems to end. It's like when are kids going to reject their parents' music and seek out their like I don't know, I just don't understand it. Like this music is so old. Like this music was made decades before they were born,
Right.
but still it has some power over them, which is cool. But it's also kind of I kind of wish they had their own music.
I made the joke once that if I had $1 for every time I've taught Wish You Were Here, that I would have cheated myself out of a lot of money because I've been paid a lot more than $1 every time I've learned. It's like there's a lot to learn in within that song.
Yeah,
It's a recognizable tune. There's chords and movement within the chord. Uh, so it teaches some coordination, you know.
right. Um, is it your idea to teach the song, or is it requested?
I mean, it never was in the beginning, but it ended up becoming one of the songs that I almost required people to learn because
Yeah,
of its like the fundamentals of holding a chord and moving notes within a chord so people can understand like, oh, you can do this with any chord, like within any chord there are ways to do
yeah,
independent movements.
yeah, yeah. I'm finding that it's just, you know, it's the challenging thing when students are at that level is to keep their hand moving over here.
Right.
Like even if they're not playing all the beats, to just keep the clock ticking, so you don't have this kind of halting, um,
Herky
you
jerky.
know, yeah, you know, there's just like this thing when you. I remember when I was a kid and I would see guitar players, I'd be like, it just looks like they're going. It just looks like that's all they're doing, but they're actually going.
Right.
Or maybe they're like. But for someone that couldn't hear, they would just see this constant strumming thing. So that's something I'm you know always trying to instill really early on, is just to keep the pendulum going. Um, you know, and it's hard. I take it for granted because like all this stuff I just learned naturally. Like, you know, even just that muting with this hand, muting with this hand, you know. Nobody taught me that. It was just, I just played the thing so much that I probably stumbled upon these techniques and just learned them that way. But a lot of people, it's like they need to really like focus on this stuff and
Right.
and
Well, how many times have you learned a song and you're like, "Oh, okay, I learned it." And then you go on about your life playing it, and then you hear it and you recognize like that's is that how the song goes?
yeah,
There's
I've
like
done
this
that too.
thing, there's a slide that happens that you're not doing, or there's a palm mute, or there isn't a palm mute where you're doing it. There, there's so many small details in the way a person delivers a song that they're all every technique that you're talking about, like your right hand engaging or not engaging, just like moving your palm muting, your left hand coming up off, and there's
When you say left hand, don't forget that I'm left-handed.
well your right hand, your fretting hand,
That's right.
your
That's
fretting hand,
correct.
um, you know, comes off sometimes, of engaging the chords or your notes. Um,
The guitar is frustrating for because there's so many ways to play a thing.
right.
There's so many ways to play a line. There's so many, is it, uh, um, as your
All
ear
the
gets
same
better,
notes, but tonally they because of the heaviness of the strings, you might be inclined to do it one way or the other.
right? And you have to start listening to the timbre, and there's just all these different degrees of, um, there's infinite ways that you can affect the way the note sounds on a guitar, which is amazing. I mean, when you think about a piano, you can basically hit it different degrees of hard,
Right.
soft to hard, but there's all this stuff with both hands that you can do to affect, you know,
And then electronically, what happens after the signal leaves your guitar?
right. This is getting back to why when I started taking guitar lessons and he was trying to show me sight reading, I was like, I can't hear how this is supposed to sound. When I listen to the recording of the song, I hear all this information that isn't transcribable.
Right.
Like there's all this, there's what you're talking about, like oh, that sounds like he's using a fuzz pedal. That's a wah wah pedal. That's um, he's he's palm muting that. He's you know he's maybe plucking that part with his finger. But it to me it was like I had to hear. You're not going to transcribe the Star-Spangled Banner by Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
It's not the way to learn it. You have to listen to how he played it, and even then, you're not going to get it. But it's like you kind of have to take in the whole picture, and that's what's so great about guitar, and especially rock guitar, is that we have like all of these variations in processing. Guitars themselves, pickups, amps, pedals, and then recording techniques, and that's a whole thing there. Um, so it's not like the old classical days where you write a part for the violin. A violin is a violin is a violin. It's like 500 years later, it's the same instrument. It's gonna play that part the same. Maybe you're gonna get specific about which way to bow or whatever, but there's not going to be a lot of confusion as to what that thing should sound like.
Right. The instrument sounds like the instrument. The guitar, in over the course of the electric guitar, over the course of 70 years,
Yeah,
has changed dramatically.
yeah,
Dramatically.
and that's what I love about it. It's just this thing that like you had Bumblefoot on your show,
What a
who's just
maniac.
like, I mean, what a again, like Charlie Hunter, he's doing stuff with the guitar that just wasn't done before. Nobody put a thimble in their finger and started tapping notes up here.
Right. No,
Like he found out a way to play new notes on the guitar.
he's an absolute maniac. Uh,
He
ge-
really is.
Genius guitar player.
Absolutely. And amazing singer.
Yeah.
Um, I talked to him right before he did that Asia gig, and he was talking about how he had to relearn how to sing
Yeah.
so that he could match the tone. I mean, it's like that is insane dedication.
Yeah.
Just to learn a whole new way to place the note in your body so that you can just be a little bit more accurate. Um,
Well, I think he understood he was going to be under a lot of scrutiny. He wanted to approach it with some reverence and you know, as a fan, probably he would expect that fans would want that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
In the last year, you've made 3 records.
13.
13 records?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
13?
Yeah.
That in the last year. That's more
Yeah.
than a record a month?
Yeah. Well, basically, the COVID effect kicked in. I was originally intending on putting out 3 albums last year. Um, I was doing, I'd already planned this before COVID. It was a Blacksugar Transmission album trilogy, kind of a seasonal thing. One in the winter, one in the summer, and then the last one in the fall. And then it was going to be a box set at the end. So anybody that pre-ordered the hard copies would get like this box. And I just had this crazy ambitious idea, and I thought, why not? And when COVID kicked in, and I realized my tours were all canceled, my first thought was, how do I make this more interesting for myself? Basically, I've got all this time. So the first thing I did was, I don't know how I got the idea, but I got this idea to do an instrumental album where I would go online every day and I would ask people for a key and a tempo and a title. and I would take whoever answered first, I would take those parameters and I would sit down and write and record a track that day and post a little clip of it a little later in the day, just as a status report.
Right.
And at the end of 13 days, I would put it out. Now, it got more interesting when I got the idea that I should get 13 guest musicians to play on it as well. And actually, Alex Skolnick was the first person
Oh, amazing.
who I asked. And it was just like, I don't know. I saw a tweet and he was talking about staying at home and being creative. And I said, hey man, I'm doing this thing. I'm crowdsourcing keys and tempos and writing a different track every day and getting, do you want to play on it? Does that sound fun? He's like, yeah, that sounds great. Send me a DM. So once I got him involved, then I was like, well, fuck, everybody's at home. I can get other people to do this too.
That's
So that ended up being Lockdown Lullabies, which I released under my Sheer Velocity moniker. That's my all instrumental kind of self-indulgent guitar thing. So I put that out, and then I covered Garbage's first album in its entirety, and I released that. I did 3 more Sheer Velocity albums of just various covers by different people, and they were also requested by like friends and followers and stuff. So those are like all over the place, like everything
so
from
those are guitar instrumental covers of
guitar instrumental covers, playing all the vocal melodies on the guitar.
right.
So just from the Beatles and Hendrix to the Police to Prodigy to Kylie Minogue, and just really all over the place. And I put some other things out too, some other just odd kind of archival things. KMFDM did a record last year that I played on called In Dub, which was a remix album, but I played all new guitar parts. So yeah, between the Sheer Velocity stuff and Blacksugar Transmission and KMFDM, it was 13 records. And
Wow. Did you ever imagine in your life that you would make 13 records in a year?
No, I didn't. But
It seems unreasonable by under any normal conditions.
well, it's also just the fact that I can pretty much do most of it myself. So as long as I'm good for the workload, then it'll get done. There's no logistical stuff to have to tackle. This is all stuff that I programmed the drums. I did everything here in house. So this isn't like super high production stuff. It sounds good, but it's not like I
Violated.
woodshedded the material for. It's very spontaneous and very
Right.
quick and dirty, and that was just to kind of keep myself interested during quarantine, really.
What's been, outside of not playing gigs, what's the what's the what's the easiest part slash best part of being home for the last year, and what's the worst part?
Let's see.
Surely there's a silver lining.
Yeah,
You like
yeah.
productivity or just playing as much as you have been.
I think the best part is just being able to, I wouldn't have come up with these ideas.
Right.
I wouldn't have come up with Lockdown Lullabies and gotten, all these incredible people to play on it, and the availability of everyone. I also played on Jason Bieler's record that came out last year, and he had the same experience because he was making his record like roughly a year ago at this time, and he had like 30 guests on that record,
Wow.
including Bumblefoot, and um, he didn't even play a single guitar solo on the whole thing because he had so many guest guitar players. So, but he said the same thing. He was like, I just got lucky. Everybody was home, so there was all this kind of. I saw your conversation with Bumblefoot too, where he was saying, this has been great for me just to kind of breathe and like not be on the hamster wheel.
Right.
And I've never had that rigorous of a touring schedule like him. My tours are sort of like, you know, a month here, a month there. Maybe a year I don't tour at all and just do local shows. Um, so I've never felt like I'm going crazy. I need a break. Like I've always kept things kind of pretty calm as far as like I don't want myself to burn out. So the worst part about it was, um, I don't know. I think the worst part about it was just the politicization of it,
Yeah.
and just that feeling every day of just like how are we fighting over the like wearing a cloth mask, and just the way it was handled, the way it was reported on, the way people, last year was a heavy year. I mean, with the George Floyd protests and everything, and Breonna Taylor, and just the countless atrocities and police brutality. Um,
Oh, I just lost. Yeah. There you are.
Sorry, I got a call there. And it was just kind of it was a really ugly year to just be at home thinking about it.
Yeah, man.
It's the kind of thing where you kind of want to be like getting together with people and like venting, but I really don't have any complaints. Like for me, being alone and staying to myself is like a no brainer. I already know how to do that. I think for some people, it's extremely hard to do. Um, some people that are forced to live together, families with kids and managing that, and the school, the virtual school stuff just sounded like a nightmare to me. So um, I really didn't have any complaints. The worst part about it from me on a personal level was I was supposed to go and do a lot of fun tours that I didn't get to do.
Right.
And but it's not like a major hardship, right?
No, I mean that's what I thought about a lot over the last year. Whatever whatever discomforts I had to endure, was it, you know, was it all that bad compared to what millions of people have to deal with outside of this year even? You know, just
Right.
I have no play. I'm a 50-year-old white dude in America. Like I have
Yeah,
shit to complain about.
exactly. That's how I feel about it. I
I've had
just
it
tried to make the
good
best of
so
it.
far. I've had it real good so far. You know,
Yeah, yeah, me too. I'm extremely cognizant of that fact.
it's the last. Yeah, I mean, America is a fucking mess, and I feel like until we stop trying to sell ads with our politics, or until the method of our information, our delivery of our information, is paid for by corporate sponsors or whatever, it's nothing is gonna get better.
Yeah, it's we're in this wild west time with the internet, and you know, nobody knows how to regulate it yet, and it's just open season for um, opportunistic, bad actors and um,
My favorite thing
hackers.
did as a kid were did you see the movie Running Man?
I never saw Running Man.
I've talked about it on here before. Running Man is a Stephen King story, I think,
I
but
think I read Running Man.
so the it's futuristic and it's game show driven, reality game show driven, but it's a death show. They're
Yeah,
criminals and they have to go through and basically gladiator their way through a string of mercenaries, and if you survive and get to the other side, then you're free to go, but otherwise you are publicly executed on live television. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is falsely accused and framed for some war crimes, but the interesting thing is, and I remember thinking very clearly as a kid, well, that's never possible, and we'll never be this barbaric. This is ridiculous. But we're really not all that far away. Um, but it it's deep fake. Like there's a
yeah,
video that is like digitally manipulated, and they digitally add his voice
yeah,
so that it says like he gives some sort of command to fire some helicopter on some civilians, and then he's prosecuted and sent away, right? And I remember thinking like, no way, that'll never be possible. Like how could you even do that? And but here we are, man.
yeah. I forgot about that.
It's crazy. And this is the dangerous thing about the imagination of humans, is that anything we can imagine, good or awful, no matter how great or how terrible,
Yeah,
is possible.
it is, and like where we're headed is ultimately AI is going to merge with humans at some point, and it's going to merge with the rich ones first, and they're going to be cognitively so much higher than the rest of us that we'll be like barn animals. We're going to know what it's like to be treated like pigs and chickens. Because essentially what like the reason why we're on top of everything now is because we had some weird cognitive advance um, that allowed us to believe in stories and fictions and organize around concepts like countries and religions and corporations and rock bands.
But
Um,
things that we don't eat don't know that we're above them, or don't believe, don't only we think that we're above them. That's the thing. Like
right,
no other no other living creatures on earth look at humans like, oh, they're above us.
right. Well, I think they know that they know to fear us, but we don't necessarily even understand their consciousness. Like we don't know what they know. Um, they aren't necessarily, you know, uh, they might have a whole different kind of intelligence that we're not aware of. But I think that when we merge with AI and become superhumans, um, there will be a level of consciousness there that we mere mortals can't even understand. And um, ultimately, it's just going to become he who has the most data, who has access to the most data, is going to have all the power. And
Do you
you
think
know,
that we'll reach that point before we?
before we die,
Yeah.
I don't think so. but I don't know. I mean, I'm just going by what, you know, I'm going by what I've read.
Because
And
I don't believe that our existence here is sustainable.
yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, there's a whole thing about colonizing space. That's something that really smart people have been advising for a long time. You
Yeah.
know, um, but yeah, I mean, who knows? I think that it's just things are changing so fast now. And what you were saying about, you know, the corporations running the politics and everything, and the way information is controlled on social media, and the fact that people can't tear themselves away from social media, and that people aren't interacting face to face anymore, so it's easier to vilify the other side.
Yeah, of course.
And um, it's just like this really bad cocktail of it's like the perfect storm of just divide and conquer, you know. And you know, there's the luddite in me says that we should all like spend a lot less time on social media. But if you are if you are a person who worships the accumulation of data, then being online all the time is constantly feeding more data into the system, which can then benefit us in different ways. You know, we think about Waze, you know, the GPS system. Like most people, they're not going to think that they know better than Waze when they're about to get into a traffic jam or something. Waze knows where to go. You don't know where to go because it has access to all the data of all the other cars, and it can
Until
tell
you
you the place to go.
realize that Waze will put you on a path to go past places that you frequent, that you'll spend money.
Yeah, that's true.
They absolutely will.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if I was an AI program, I would have done that.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
they give you cute voices to work with. You can have Mr. T or whatever. Hey, fool, take a left.
I pity the fool that takes a right.
That's right. That's right. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. But I think
Well,
people are beautiful, and I think that we're capable of greatness. But goddamn, we're naive, and we will, we're a soft sell.
yeah,
We think we're. That's the incredible thing is the conviction of people's belief uh, is so strong.
yeah,
But so long as it agrees with or is traveling, it doesn't cross the grain of what we believe. We're a real soft sell.
yeah, exactly. And I think that you know what I said before about the fact that humans are able to organize in such large numbers is because we can get ourselves to believe so passionately in just a made up idea, you know, whether it's the USA or
You know,
it's Apple computers or it's Christianity. And it's kind of an amazing organizational tool, but you know, it's all just kind of it's just like this smoke and mirrors thing that and a lot of people know it too, and they just don't they prefer not to even investigate because they're kind of standing on a house of cards. You know, if their belief system is on such shaky ground, it's kind of scary to think about. Um,
and how
I
do you
prefer
investigate over a 2,000-year-old philosophy? Because
right.
it's been perverted so many times that it's not even the original concept. Like anything, you know. I mean, Lost was great the first couple of seasons, and then it ended terribly.
Yeah.
Most It's kind of an analogy for religions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into a religion rabbit hole, but
That's fine.
it's amazing how you're saying, like it's been perverted. I mean, even just in the TV age, how religion got turned into this entertainment. These televangelists, just taking all of the, all of the reflection and the quietude of normal worship, and just putting it into this noisy TV format with
Showbiz.
ads and, like,
It's showbiz. And it's send me $20 and I'll send you this towel. Rub it on your forehead and you'll be healed. And your demon possession addiction, your porn addiction will disappear.
yeah. So I think they just keep figuring out ways to keep it relevant and keep it, you know, in people's lives, and the changes are gradual enough that people go along with it.
I think maybe that'll be after the touring, the podcast. Probably the Church of Squires is the final destination.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think it's a great idea. I've got one commandment.
Don't
And
be an asshole.
that's right. Just don't be an asshole. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Good. It's a good commandment.
that's it. What do you got planned for the rest of your weekend?
Probably Central Park a little bit later today. And tomorrow I have some guitar lessons. I don't know. I usually sit down and record a few hours worth of stuff every day. So that's just kind of part of my ritual. So I'll probably do that tomorrow. I've already done some of that today. Um, yeah, I think that's going to be it. I kind of have a day off today, so
Nice.
thinking about the park.
Um, well, I hope that you have a good Central. I have a special place in my heart for Central Park because it's where my wife and I decided we would get married, and it's the place where I laid my plans for, well, for getting married and for moving to New York. So,
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's very special.
laying on a blanket in Central Park, right at about this time of year.
Yeah,
Might have been June. Yeah, but
yeah, that's beautiful. There's a DJ there called Nick at Night, and he starts spinning like in the late afternoon, and it's where all the people are roller skating,
nice.
and it's just fun. Like,
Do you skate down there? Up
I
there?
don't. I'm actually thinking about learning to skate this summer
Yeah, nice.
because it just looks like so much fun. When people are on skates, they're always in a good mood. Like,
Right.
it's incredible what it does to a person's disposition,
Careful of your
Um,
wrists.
but yeah, I'm a little scared of that.
Well, wear some braces, wear braces on your wrists.
Yeah,
You don't want
I
to break your
definitely thought
circulation.
about that,
Don't break your money makers.
dude. Yeah, I I'm very fearful of that. I've had a couple episodes of, I've torn a ligament in my thumb and had various small injuries that have made me like wonder how screwed I would be if I really like broke something.
You know what? Before we go, I feel like I would be foolish to not ask you about your Sully guitar because John Sullivan has become such
Yeah.
a close and dear friend of mine over the course of the last year and a half. And I see you playing that guitar a lot.
Yeah, I love it. And I just had our mutual friend Matt Gabbs set it up.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
Gabs is great.
yeah, I mean, it's it's just one of these player guitars. The first time I picked it up, it was just like butter. But yeah, it's two humbuckers. It's got coil tap. So if you split the coils, it thins out.
Right.
I was always a Strat guy. So this is kind of luxurious for me to have like this fast fingerboard and like humbucking pickups, and it's just nice. It's
You were
like I almost feel like, what's that?
you were a classic Strat guy or a super Strat guy or
Classic Strat guy. And then I had a Super Strat built back in 2012, and that sort of became my main guitar. And it needs a little work right now, so I'm not really playing that one too much. The old Strat, it's actually a Japanese um, 85 Japanese Strat that I bought for 250 bucks used, and it I have played that thing down to a nub. Like there's nothing left of it. It needs a fret job. It needs all the electronics replaced. It needs a lot of TLC right now. So, um, but yeah, this is. I haven't played anything else for months.
right. Wonderful.
And it's a Sully Stardust. Um, it's a production model, and it's left-handed, which is nice.
Which helps you.
He was kind enough to do that and make lefties, and I love the fretboard access up here. That's another luxurious, you know, being able to get all the way up there.
Right.
And yeah, so this is kind of my main thing right now until I get Matt to refret my old Strat. Then I might become an old school Strat guy again.
We'll see. I love that shop there. I'm really happy to see him at the guitar shop these days.
Yeah, it's really cool, right?
Yeah, I love
And I
it.
just saw him at a party like 2 weeks ago, and he was wearing a Couch Riffs hat.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
And when I wore the one that says I'm famous enough to be on an episode of Couch Riffs,
Yeah.
uh, it's one of those shirts like you put it on and you walk down the street and you're like, why is everyone looking at me? You realize everybody's just reading your shirt.
I get a lot of joy out of putting those. I imagine that most of those end up at Goodwill. I don't know, but I get a lot of joy out of sending those to folks because I just think it's fucking hilarious.
It is, and no one's giving them to Goodwill. Come on.
Well, I think if perhaps a lot of them just stay in the bottom drawer.
I disavow Couch Riffs
You
this
know,
day.
I haven't. There have been some folks that I haven't seen with them. Uh, it's a funny shirt, and it's supposed to be funny. It's basically a little bit of an expensive gag,
Yeah.
but it's like roll with it. Like I'll roll with it for as long as people will engage with me because it's just fucking ridiculous.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great, and it'll make people look up couch riffs.
Well, maybe. Hope so.
Yeah.
Um, I appreciate you fearlessly talking about the state of America with me and various other non-musical subjects. I like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving me so much time today.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure talking to you. I love what you do, and this was cool.
I agree. I'm very, very, very happy to have made your acquaintance and to be seeing what you're doing. Eventually, I'll have a $150 gig for you, maybe.
Put me in, man. I'm so
can't,
ready.
I can't wait until things, change up and, maybe I'll start gigging again too. So hopefully
You should.
we'll cross paths and I'll see you in person.
All right, Mr. Squires.
Have yourself a really great weekend.
You too, man.
Oh, if you
Uh,
have any high res photos of yourself or any quality photographs, you see the little posters that I make and the thumbnails that I create for these episodes.
yeah,
Would you mind sending a couple things for me that I could, chop
absolutely.
and that I can destroy for my own
Absolutely.
creation and joy?
I will send you a couple photos with photographer credits.
Excellent. I like those best. All right.
Cool, man.
Hey, have a great weekend.
You too, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Terrific.
What's that?
You're great.
You're great.
No, go on.
Suicide is great. 7 seconds are great.
That's true. Bye.
All right, buddy. See ya.